depending on what president was in place throughout the history of Haiti, at times some of the presidents basically were mob leaders. I mean, basically the mob was in charge of it, and even now you might say that. But there's just complete chaos when he moved back 7 years ago. And he tells a story about how there were shootings and kidnappings going on his street for the first 3 months. And he says one night, we heard the shootings again. Because, when the police are in on it, or the police are part of it, calling the police is not necessarily an option. And, and when you do call the police there for anything, they expect a bribe to do anything. And so it's just a messed up place. And of course, he has ties back to America. And obviously, as he comes back, people are going to know that. So he's worried for his own family that someone, not that he had a lot of money, but people are definitely, they see him going back and forth between America and Haiti. That means money. And so one night, his family, they just all huddled together, and the shops were kind of close that night, and they huddled. And at that time, he had, I think, two of his oldest boys, and then Timothy was a baby. And they were praying and just trying to hear from God. And he just prayed, God, just help us get through the night. And the next thing they remember is they woke up together in a big pile, because that's how God got through the night. But later what happened was, it's 80, so this is what he said. He said, some strong boys in the neighborhood caught and killed the kidnappers. So, I mean, that was like a good thing for them. But that's, in America, that's like vigilante justice. That's like the only justice that was working. And so, but when they got these guys, they caught these guys, and then within a month, after that, a month or two after that prayer time, the police found and surrounded the entire ring of kidnappers and caught them all in one shot. And they found lists that had Salonik's name and his oldest son Mark's name on it. They were on the list. And can you imagine going and doing ministry? I'm glad he told me that story after I was there, not before. But it's much different now. They actually let us walk around between the house and the school without people with us all the time. But you hear these stories of people who do incredible things. Like, what? How do you do that? How does Saul make this kind of change in his life? How does he become Paul? How does he go through all those things? It's about grace. Listen, when you understand what Jesus has done for you, and when you understand who you really were before Jesus, and I love about that passage that Dan was reading, and it says the same thing. If you read Ephesians, there's this whole section, Ephesians 2, that says, before Christ, we're separated from God, we're strangers, we're separated from Israel. Like, he lists all these things of who we weren't before Jesus, but what he's done for us. Have you ever been rescued, and you're so, it just overwhelms you, and have you ever had a second chance? How many of you guys have just blown it, and your wife gives you a second chance? When you get the second chance, and you really get the grace, then it really propels you toward the doctrine. And what happens when you leave grace out, and I'm just trying to set us up for these next 2 Sundays as we teach about the foundational teachings, but if you leave the rebar out of the concrete, it'll crumble. If you leave the grace out of the truth, it'll crumble. Because number one, you'll get legalistic like the Pharisees. Number two, you'll teach the truth without love. And number three, if you leave the grace out of the truth, you won't be patient with people who may not see things the way that you do. Because we all are still learning, Jesus might be able to say some things with incredible authority, but we're all still in the process of learning. But it is so important that we understand, and that we want to teach people what the truth is. Because Paul can see in his life, there's been a shift that has happened because of the truth. Let's read a few of these verses in Ephesians 2, and of course Paul is writing this. Ephesians chapter 2, he's writing this from a prison, or at least house arrest, and he talks about grace a little bit. Let's see what he says about grace, this key component to doctrine. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 2. Of course, in chapter 2, verse 8, it said we're saved by grace through faith. But Ephesians chapter 3, verse 2 says this, surely you have heard about, I like how it says in the New American Standard Version, it doesn't, here it says administration. The New American Standard Version says, surely you've heard about the stewardship of God's grace given to me. See, when you receive a gift and you've been rescued and you really understand what God has done for you, you are now a steward of that. You know, if you found a magic pill that cured some disease that was about to kill you, but then you kept that to yourself, that's not very gracious. But when you understand this is a free gift of God, in the teachings of Scripture, the foundation is God speaking to us to set us free, and it's the foundation our lives can be built on. And you really get, before I met Jesus, this is how messed up I was. And you really sense that grace in your life. You want to build your foundation, not on the sand, like Jesus talked about, when the storms come and it'll wash that foundation, but on the rock of Jesus Christ. Look at verse 7. It says, I became the servant of this gospel by the gift of God's grace given me through the working of his power. It's God's grace that motivates. You know, I'll tell you, the most evangelistic people I know who share their faith, the churches that are reaching their community, are churches that understand that it's a real thing. You know, a lot of times champions of different causes, you know, Michael J. Fox has championed his cause of Parkinson's disease. You know, Christopher Reeve, when he was alive, he championed a cause for something that, well, because it affected his life. They realized these diseases are real, you know, and they were trying to make a difference. When you understand the disease of sin is real, and what the power of God's grace can do, you will be a champion of the cause of the gospel, of telling people, this is what Jesus is, who he is. This is what the Bible says. This is how you become saved. But I want to just share a little bit of my testimony in your outline here. I think let me use one of the verses. This is Ephesians 4:29. Look at Ephesians 4:29. And again, the New American Standard uses the word grace here. I think here is, does anyone have the New American Standard version with them? Does anyone have that version? Shannon, do you have that? Pete, you have the New American Standard version?
Ephesians 4:29.
Yeah, just read that really loud.
Let no impulsive word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification, according to the need of the moment, that it may give grace to those who hear.
Now here's the thing, when we're speaking these doctrines, it's not about the grace to those who hear. But you know what? Have any of you heard something that was true, but wasn't said with grace? You know, there's been times where I'm sure you have even confronted someone with the truth, but you didn't do it with grace. Grace, when someone sees the life lived in the grace in your life, it will earn you the right, they'll respect you. Even if they don't agree with you, they'll respect what you say if you do it in grace. Now, I just wanted to share a little bit of a testimony of my journey with, and maybe it'll help you guys understand why sometimes I teach and say the things the way that I do. But when I was growing up, I went to a church that was constantly teaching doctrine, constantly shoving truth down my throat. But I started to do that too. I remember when I was taught a lot of Bible. I memorized a lot of Bible very early on. And I can remember, it was probably the second grade. And this is horrible, but I remember if someone had told me this is not something I deducted for myself at that time, but someone told me, I probably one of my parents, that, you know, one difference between our church and the Catholic church is Catholics don't really read the Bible, they just have their sayings and stuff. Don't tell your kid that, even if you think that's true. I remember sitting at lunch with my two Catholic friends, and we got taught about something, and I just said, you know, Catholics don't read their Bible. You know, now whether that was true or not, there wasn't a lot of grace in that, right? I remember later on when I had two high school friends that were Catholic, and I remember they did a quiz bowl, or what do you call it up here in Iowa? You do this where you travel around, and it's an academic thing that high schoolers do, and you have a buzzer, and they do it down in Missouri still. this academic competition and